There were some conditions that we have to follow in order to get prema. That leads us to Sudhanam, or pure chanting. And with that we're qualified for prema. So before the Sudhanam, then we would have Namabhas. So we have various people who chant. Of course, that's not so much evident in the Western world, but in India, so many people are chanting, and in Bengal and Orissa, Vrindavan, so many people are doing kirtan, and many of them are also doing Hare Krishna kirtan. But these chanters are of different sorts. So we have to make distinctions between the different people. Of course, it's very nice to regard and give respect to all people who chant the holy name, whether they chant once or many times or whatever. But some are on a higher standard and some are on lower standards. So we have to make a little distinction because the results will be different. And according to your association, then you will tend to become like that. So we have to watch who we associate with. So we have to distinguish the different types of chanting. So we call this Namabhas. An Abhas. What is an Abhas? Sometimes we call it a shadow. It's maybe the main meaning is that it's like a dull image of something. So it's not the real image, it's a dull form of the image, of the object. Like the sun behind the clouds. So when the sun is behind the clouds, we can often figure out where the sun is because there's a bright patch in the sky. So that indicates the sun is shining. So that's an abhas of the sun. So there's something that obstructs the object and then it turns into an abhas. So therefore, like the sun with the clouds, the sun is there and the sun is always shining in the same power, but the clouds obstruct that. So therefore we don't get the full effect of the sun. So that's the abhas of the sun. It's not as powerful. So we have the name also obstructed by certain things, and therefore it doesn't have the same qualities, the same power. Certainly has some power, but it's not exactly the same as when there's no obstructions. So what obstructs the name? The impurities of the jiva. In other words, we do have desires and false ideas, etc. And these can obstruct the name. And therefore, when we chant it, or we hear that name, it is abhas. In any case, the name is always the name. As we saw, the name is Chintamani, non-different from Krishna. So Krishna comes into the material world, and he is never contaminated. So the name is never contaminated also. But nevertheless, it looks a little bit different, or the effects are a little different when different people chant it. Just like when the demons see Krishna, they also see him differently. Why? Because their eyes are different. The devotees see Krishna one way, and the people of the inimical people, demons, they see him differently because their eyes are covered up. They say something of Krishna, but not the actual spiritual form. So, therefore, we have coverings on the jiva which cause this obstruction. Like that. As the brilliance of the sun extinguishes the darkness, the holy name extinguishes the darkness of illusion. However, clouds or mist may cover the sun from the viewer so that only a portion of light is perceived. So even if the sun is shining, if we have clouds, the sun is not very bright. So similarly, the name is like the sun, but if we have these obstructions, which act like clouds, then the effect is not the same. It's like the sun on a cloudy day. When ignorance, ajnana, and material tendencies, anarthas, are prominent in the living entity, they obstruct the sun of the holy name so that the devotee experiences only a portion of the full effect of the name. So we have two things here, ignorance and anarthas. So, though one may speak of the holy name being covered by the clouds of anarthas, in reality the sun of the holy name can never be covered. Rather, the senses of the materially conditioned individual are covered. So we know the sun can get covered by clouds from our point of view. But if we go up in an airplane above the clouds, then the sun is shining brightly as ever. So the sun is not really affected, even though from our point of view it's covered. So then in the same way, then we have nama bas, but that's in relation to the individual chanting the name. The name itself is like the sun, but when the jiva chants it, then we get this different effect. So that is why different people get different results from chanting. So if you chant the pure name, you get one effect. If you chant nama bas, you get another effect. And in fact, people will progress, but they progress very slowly if they have nama bas. If they have pure name, they can progress very quickly. So we should not blame the name for the results. Actually, our coverings are the problem. So we saw there were the two obstructions. One was ignorance or avidya, and we had anarthas. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur compares the ignorance to fog and the anarthas to clouds. So what is that ignorance, and why would it create a problem? But we can see if people don't have knowledge, then they cannot really practice bhakti properly. So there are different types of ignorance which are there. In relation to the name, for instance, if we think the name is material, or the name and Krishna are different, we know they're abhinna, but if people think they're different, the name is simply a material sound, and Krishna is a material body, then if we are ignorant of the position of the name, we offend the name, and we get different results. If we think Krishna is a devata, or material being, or Brahman is supreme, and all the forms are illusory, then we get a different result. This is a contamination of jnana. If we think the jiva becomes God, he's not a Nitya Krishna Das, eternal servant of God, but he is God, or he becomes God, then this also obstructs bhakti. We cannot do bhakti properly if we think that we are God. This is, if we have such a conception, which is basically a Mayavad conception, then we can't proceed, we can't do bhakti properly. We don't progress properly. If we think the goal is either liberation or material enjoyment, then of course we can get those things, but we don't get prema. So it's not the only, there can be many other types of ignorance also, but these are some of the things that will obstruct us if we have this type of ignorance. So that is why we do need that sambandha gyan. We have to know what the jiva is, what Supreme Lord is, what Maya is, how they relate to each other. If we don't have that foundational knowledge, we cannot practice bhakti properly. So you can get some effect, but you won't get prema. So anyway, so how do we remove the ignorance? Very easy, by knowledge. So that's why we have scriptures to give us that knowledge. We get knowledge of the different things like the jiva and Krishna and the name, etc. That's called sambandha gyan. We get knowledge of the goal, not the liberation or material knowledge. That's the prayojana. And we get the knowledge of pure bhakti, that is the abhidheya. So all this comes from scripture, and we get the scripture through devotees. So therefore, if we are kanishta adhikari and we only worship the Lord and we don't associate with devotees, then we'll have this ignorance. Consequently, our bhakti is, and our name is namabhas or bhakti abhas. So that is one thing, the fog. That was the avidya or the ignorance. The other are the anarthas, or the various coverings on the jiva which will manifest as various desires, etc. So on the gross level, we will have desires on earth. We have desire for enjoyment on earth. So if this is very strong, it is very difficult to practice bhakti, because in bhakti we're trying to surrender to the Lord. So if we got all these desires to enjoy now, it's very difficult to progress. That's why we have that one 10th aparad, that we remain materially attached. We can't give up our material attachments even after understanding all the philosophy, etc. Still, we've got to hold on to our material things. So if you really strongly hold on to the material things, you can't progress. Okay? So we may not have that strong attachment, but still we like to enjoy on earth. We like to get material things for our benefit right now. So that's one type of desire. And then when you chant, you're trying to accumulate material things for enjoyment. So that's becomes an obstacle. If you're on a little higher level and you know scriptures a little bit, then you'll strive to have enjoyment in your next body. And this is, of course, the followers of Karma Mimamsa. They're trying to get the Svarga Loka. So this is a little bit more refined type of enjoyment, but it's still material enjoyment, sattva guna enjoyment. Yeah. That's also an anartha. If you're a yogi, you want siddhis, various powers. Or if you're a jnani, then you want liberation, impersonal liberation. So all these desires are anartha. If they're very strong, then they will create big problems for us. If they are a little bit, then with knowledge and with the practice of bhakti, we can get rid of them. But if we use our bhakti and chanting the holy name to fulfill these things, then this becomes a big anartha, and it puts us in namabhas. Due to our desires, then we develop all sorts of say emotional problems, which we call weakness of heart. So it may manifest as greed. We have a desire to possess material objects. We have possessiveness of things. It may result in envy and hatred, and ultimately in violence. That's matsarya. It may result in cheating. It's called kutinati, in which we act one way but we do another thing. And with desire for fame, pratishta. So these are four things that Bhaktivinoda mentioned, but we get many other false type of desires that we manifest in our heart. So these are called weaknesses of heart. All a result of, you could say, our desire for some enjoyment in the material world. So that's the second type of anartha. The third is called aparad. Of course, namabhas, if it's unintentional, then we can put it in the anartha, the namabhas category. Now, if it becomes very intentional, then we have a whole separate category called namaparad instead of namabhas. So if it's not so intentional, then we can classify it as anartha. So the aparads, we have namaparads, which the 10 namaparads which we chant every day. That is in relation to chanting the holy name. But it also represents aparads in relation to the whole process of bhakti, or the avideya. We have seva aparads. These are mentioned in the Nectar Devotion, quoting from different Puranas, different offenses you make in relation to worshipping the deity, such as quarreling in front of the deity, or going into the temple room with your shoes on, or touching the deity when you're impure, like that. So these are considered seva aparads, or offenses towards the deity. So we have offenses against the process of bhakti and the name, offenses against the deity Krishna. Then we have offenses against the Vaishnava aparad. So these are all very detrimental if we have these. And then there's the general aparad against all jivas, that is violence against jivas who are not Vaishnavas. It's also considered to be a type of aparad. So if they're done accidentally, they don't have such an effect. They still have some effect, so they can be called anarthas and part of namabhas. If they're very intentional, then we end up with namaparad, and that's very detrimental for us. So we have these two things. We have the ignorance, which we can remove by knowledge, which is not so difficult. And then we have the anarthas, which we have to remove also. These may be more difficult to remove because people have these bad habits, and bad habits are generally difficult to remove. It takes a long time to remove these habits. Now, if we do bhakti, of course, these things can be removed. That's what we call anartha nivritti. So as we chant the holy name and do other processes of bhakti, we go from anartha nivritti to nishtha. In nishtha, the anarthas are not all removed, but they're removed to the extent that our bhakti is steady. So let's say we got 51% bhakti and 49% anartha. So it's a little bit of a prominence of bhakti there, so it's easier to do bhakti. And then we increase that more and more, we can get to ruchi and then asakti, where there's less and less anarthas and more bhakti. So it becomes easier and easier as we go on. So the anarthas are there, and then the anarthas still continue a little bit into bhava stage. But, so we can't have complete anartha nivritti at the very beginning of bhakti. It only results in bhava stage. Nevertheless, we do have to have these control over these anarthas so they don't become too prominent, and we don't consciously try to fulfill our material desires. So that much we have to do. And we can, as I said, the process of bhakti itself and chanting will remove anarthas. The other way, or the other method is, of course, we have good association. If we have good association, generally we can more easily get rid of our anarthas. So, therefore, we have namabhas, with ignorance and anarthas, clouds and fog. We clear that up, the ignorance up by sambandha gyan, and we can clear up the anarthas by the bhakti, which is the avideya. And we come to Sudanam, we chant Sudanam, then we can get prema, which is the prayojana. So this is sambandha gyan, avideya, and prayojana, how they're related to each other in relation to namabhas and Sudanam. So, though we don't prefer namabhas, we prefer Sudanam, still namabhas has effect. It has we get some results from it. So it's a very good punya. So by punyas you get material results. So bhakti is said to be the best punya. So you can get freedom from a disease by chanting with namabhas. You can get artha, dharma, kama, all these different things. You go to svargaloka by namabhas. So it can fulfill your material desires, though that's not what we want. And you can also get moksha, liberation, with namabhas. We see that in a second, Ajamil destroyed all of his karmas, past, present, future. So that way, so you can get out of the material world, get moksha like that. So it can give you moksha also. But the best effect is that by doing namabhas, eventually you associate with devotees and you develop faith in pure bhakti and you chant purely. So that's the best effect of namabhas. You can come to the level of Sudanam by association, etc. So therefore there's good benefit there. What are the types of namabhas? There's generally two types. One is the namabhas with no faith. So we're ignorant, we have anarthas, we don't even have a desire to chant or worship the Lord. So, but yet we may chant the Lord accidentally. So that's without faith. So if we do it without offense and without faith, that is accidentally but no offense involved, we don't have Vaishnava aparad, whatever, then it has the effect of destroying our karmas, even instantaneously, as in the case of Ajamil. So it's quite powerful on its own, even if it is accidental bhakti without faith. The other is with faith. Of course, the faith could be of different types. It could be a mixed faith or whatever, or kind of a deceptive faith, or it could be sincere faith. In either case, if we do have some ignorance or too many anarthas, we'll still call it namabhas. So many devotees, they may be practicing, but they haven't, let's say the Kanishtas. So they have some sort of bhakti because they're worshipping the Lord in the temple, but they don't have knowledge, they don't associate with devotees, they don't understand the bhakti scriptures, so therefore they're at the namabhas level. They're doing it with faith, but still they have, ignorance, so therefore it's namabhas. So these are the general two types. In the no faith category, in Bhagavatam it describes these four types. So the first is called sanketya, which means you say the holy name but you don't mean Krishna, you mean something else. So as Ajamil chanted the name Narayana, he didn't mean Vishnu, he meant his son. He named his son Narayana, he would call out his son's name. So it's using the holy name but indicating something else. So that's called sanketya. And of course we have many examples of that in India. People name shops after Krishna or Vishnu or Govinda or whatever, but they're not even glorifying the Lord by doing that. Or they name their children after Krishna, Venugopal or something like that, but they're not Vaishnavas. It's a nice name, so we'll name them that. But, so this is all sanketya, where they chant without devotion. Parihasa, jokingly, we call out the name of Krishna for some reason. Or when people make a joke with the devotees, they don't really have any faith, but they joke around with them. And then they call it Hare Krishna in a joking way. Stoba, this is, the name is used to fill up syllables in classical singing, for instance, or in poetry, just to fill up the syllables. They say Krishna or Narayana, just to fill up the syllables, like that, which is common in classical singing. And they use the syllables of Narayana just to display their voice and whatever like that. Hela is doing it without attention. Oh Krishna, I'm tired today, like that. Well, these are some types of without faith, people doing it. Or Bhagavatam says, you chant the name of falling off a cliff, stumbling on a road, receiving injury to the body, being bitten by snakes, tormented with fever, being attacked with sticks. And you chant the holy name somehow or other, then it's considered namabhas, and you don't get hellish punishment. So it destroys their karmas. So these are all the accidental or unintentional no faith chanting, namabhas. Then we have chanting intentionally with some sort of faith. But it is, we say it's an abhas still. So one is we have a weak faith or very little faith or maybe no faith, but there is no deception involved in this. And eventually we can approach a real guru and chant seriously and get Sudanam. So that's the case of a Kanishtadikari who's got some sincerity. So he doesn't have knowledge, but at least he is worshipping the Lord. So he may be chanting, and he can progress from that stage through mercy of devotees. The other type of Shraddha Namabhas is called Pratibimba. So this is not very sincere at all. They're intentionally chanting, but they have very strong desire for liberation or for material enjoyment. So in other words, the anarthas are quite strong. So it ends up with a type of mixed bhakti. And of course, if they want liberation, ultimately they're chanting to get rid of the form of God completely. So this is quite offensive. So this is not good at all. So it's called pratibimba, which means it's like the picture here we see on the water. If the water is very calm, then we get a nice reflection of the sun. So the image is good. If we have waves in the water, the reflection is no longer there. We get little sparkles here and there. So that's what we mean by the pratibimba. The name becomes completely fractured. So the result is much, much, much less. Very, very little because of that. With the Chaya Namabhas, or shadow, at least the form is still there. So we get more effect from that. And we can get to Sudha Bhakti. With this false one, it's very difficult to get to pure Bhakti because the aparad is involved. We're thinking Krishna has a false form or whatever, material form. So, not good. So these are the two types with faith. So, if we are at Namabhas stage, how do we correct that? Now, generally, we have to go beyond that because, as I said, if we have Namabhas, we can't get prema. And the goal of our sampradaya is prema. So, therefore, we have to get beyond Namabhas and get to pure name, Sudanam. How do we do that? One, we take shelter of a guru or devotees. We get the teachings, Samandha Gyan, etc. Learn about pure bhakti. We get instructions on chanting, how to chant properly, what is pure bhakti, what is mixed bhakti, etc. Avoid, this Shraddha, Pratibimba, Shraddha, Namabhas, etc. Don't have a desire for liberation or desire for material gains, etc. And by doing that, following this and continuing our practice of chanting, we get to Sudanam. And when we get to Sudanam, then we can get to the goal, which is prema. That's the prayojana. So we talk about pure bhakti, pure name, and pure devotees. So it's a little confusing sometimes because we'll think that maybe pure means it's the highest stage, prema. So pure devotee means a prem bhakta, or pure bhakti means prema, or pure nema means pure chanting means prema also. But actually, to get to prema, you have to have pure name. So it's your sadhana. And this will lead to bhava and lead to prema. Like we talk about uttama bhakti, pure bhakti. It's a sadhana by which you get to bhava and you get to prema. So it doesn't begin at prema, it begins in the sadhana. And if you don't get to that stage, you don't get to the prema. So we practice pure bhakti or pure name and we get to the final goal, prema. So therefore, even the pure devotee, we can say, is the devotee who is doing pure bhakti in sadhana, or chanting the holy name purely in sadhana. He's also called pure devotee for that reason. And then he goes through the different stages to bhava and then to prema. So therefore, when we say pure, it doesn't always mean the highest stage. Prema is the last stage, but to get there, you have to follow the process of pure bhakti and pure name. Okay. That finishes that section. Anybody question there?
Yes, so the first slide shows on the first.
Yeah.
The first slide shows we're talking about Namabhas means due to offences the effect of the name is weak.
Yeah.
And then I was just reflecting on that as you're going along, because you were talking about Ajamil, how he named his son Narayan.
Yeah.
He got the full effect of the name. He got purified by.
He didn't get prema though.
He didn't get prema.
He got.
So he got the full
Yeah.
effect, so he got the effect of pure chanting.
Well, it wasn't. No, that's not the final effect of pure chanting. The effect of pure chanting is prema. We're not interested in liberation or freedom from karmas. So, that's a one effect. I'm saying it has an effect,
Yeah.
and you can get liberation, or you can get material things from Namabhas, but you can't get prema. That's
just as you explained then. Chanting the name purely leads to prema.
Yeah.
It's not instant. So the same thing for him. All his anarthas were removed by that. He went to Harinama, he performed.
Then he did pure bhakti. Then he did pure bhakti sadhana. Then he went to yeah. So in other words, Namabhas can lead to Sudanam or pure bhakti. It's not necessarily, doesn't all the time, but it can. Right. But if you just continue Namabhas or mixed bhakti or whatever, then you progress upwards, but you don't get prema. Yeah. You can get liberation, or you can go to Svargaloka, but you don't get prema.
That's understood. But then, just like going back to the first slide, I was talking about how the effect of the name is weak. I'm just wondering, is it more like the analogy that Srila Prabhupada uses? It's like the rainfall falls everywhere, but depending on where it falls.
It grows, the plant grows, or the plant doesn't grow.
Like it falls on the road, there's no effect, but it falls on fertile ground.
Yeah.
So even if we're chanting Namabhas, if we actually have that intention to develop God consciousness, then it's going to be more effective than someone who may be chanting in another way.
Well, yeah. Well, yeah. In other words, Namabhas, the positive effect is eventually it leads to pure chanting, Sudanam. That's the best effect. But then the other effects is you get material results or liberation. So that'll depend on your association. So that's why the Kanishtadhikaris at Namabhas, but if he gets association of Madhyamadhikaris, then he develops into a Madhyama. If he doesn't get that association, it's very difficult for him to get up to that stage.
What I'm really wondering about, or questioning, is the statement that was on that first slide about the effect of the name is weak.
Yeah.
I mean, how can the name be effective? I mean, okay, maybe you then use the analogy of the clouds. How it's not the sun's covered by the clouds,
Well, it's just like our bhakti in the beginning is bhakti, but when we start as a little seed, it's not prema in the beginning. It's just a little seed of bhakti. Then it gets bigger and bigger, and then finally goes to ruchi and asakti, and then it gets to bhava. Even then, it's not perfect, and then it gets to prema. So bhakti manifests more and more strongly as we go on, and it's weaker because we have more anarthas and karma and so many things covering it. So the same with the name. The sun is always the sun, but because we got so many coverings, then they will manifest in us in different ways, and different people will manifest differently because they have different coverings. So therefore the bhakti is weaker, or the name is weaker in some and stronger in other. Doesn't mean the name is, but the coverings make the effect weak.
That's my point. It seems to be more, not so much the effect of the name is weak, but our capacity to derive the benefit of the name is not.
Well, yeah, I can say that's another way of saying it. Yeah.
On the signs, is often the Brahmadis or...
Yeah, that's Namabhas.
It's not about
Yeah.
So they're always chanting that, but that means they chant without faith or without offense also.
Yeah. Then they get a good effect. They can get free of karmas. They don't even know it. I think in Japan they have Rama, margarine or something like that. Rama. Good effect.
All the old kings in Thailand also.
Oh, the roads of Rama also. Rama 4, Rama 3, like this, and the roads in Bangkok. Yeah, a good effect from that also. Of course, it's the name of their kings also, and their kings were named after Ramchandra. So it's like Narayan, Ajamil chanting Narayan's name. So the kings also, and their family also get good effect because they're talking about the King Rama.
The 10 offenses, it says the root cause of all the 10 offenses is inattentive chanting. So can you talk a bit about that?
Well, that comes later on here because we go through the aparads one by one. So inattention is one of them that's covered here in one chapter. So we should go on to this now. Okay. After the second chapter, then Bhaktivinoda covers the one chapter on each aparad, and he explains it. So the first one is sadhu ninda, which is just literally translated as criticizing the devotee. So it's like Vaishnava aparad. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, their Lord Chaitanya compares this to the mad elephant. So it's called the mad elephant offense because the elephant is very big and the bhakti creeper is very small. So if he comes into the field and he steps on your bhakti creeper, then it's destroyed. So that's the mad elephant, the Vaishnava aparad or the sadhu ninda. In other words, it has very serious effect, the Vaishnava aparad, to stunt the bhakti creeper or maybe even destroy it. Like the elephant stepping on a small plant will destroy it. And of course the mad elephant, he's mad, which means he's not very rational also. Just without thinking, he just destroys everything. So that's the effect of this aparad. It destroys the bhakti a lot. So it's a sadhu ninda. So who's the sadhu? Criticize the sadhu. Who's the sadhu that gets criticized? So therefore we have to discuss who is the devotee. Because this is what we're concentrating on, criticism of the devotee. And we may have many people who appear to be devotees or chanting or whatever. They may wear orange cloth, they may have Vaishnava tilak on or whatever. Or they may look like they're very saintly. But who's the real sadhu? Who's the real devotee? So we have to start distinguishing people and find out who's the real devotee. So there are many characteristics or qualities mentioned in the different scriptures like Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita. But the central quality that we have to look for is surrender to Krishna. Surrender to the Supreme Lord. That's the main quality. And there may be other qualities like tolerance and peacefulness, humility, mercy, detachment, etc. Fine, but there must be that surrender to Krishna there. That's the main quality we're looking for. The others may not manifest so perfectly or whatever, but nevertheless, we always have to have that surrender to Krishna. That's the main quality. Okay. And other things are not related, so we should not judge a high or low devotee dependent on varna. That's material. Sattva, Raja, Tama. So if someone is a brahmana, born in a brahmana family, doesn't make him a better devotee than a person born in a Sudra family or a Mleccha family. So we can't distinguish on varna. Ashrama is the same. One may think, oh, he's a great devotee because he's a sannyasi. And then this one's a grihastha, so he's not so good. But that also is another material consideration. These are varnashramic designations only, external. So the devotee may be very advanced to be a grihastha. In Lord Chaitanya's movement, he was a sannyasi, but most of his devotees were grihastha. And throughout their life, they never changed. But they were great devotees of the Lord. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a grihastha most of his life. He was a great devotee of the Lord. So we can't really distinguish based upon ashram also. These are material designations. And we're looking for the surrender to Krishna, not what's external. Age also is not a consideration. So some people say, oh, because he's so old, he must be wise or whatever, great devotee because he's older, senior. Sometimes it's true, sometimes it's not true also. Old people could also be fools. Or a young person could be a great devotee, as Prahlad is a great devotee, or Sukadeva Goswami was very young, maybe 16 years old when he walked into the arena of Parikshit Maharaj, and they had very elderly sages like Vyasadeva and Narada Muni there, but they were listening to him, Sukadeva speak the Bhagavatam. So age, whether young or old, doesn't really matter. We're again looking for the surrender to the Lord. Strength, or maybe healthy or unhealthy or whatever. Doesn't matter again. Beauty, what he looks like or what she looks like or whatever. We don't consider the status of the devotee based upon their looks. Wealth, because the devotee has more money doesn't mean he's a better devotee. Because a guru has more money doesn't mean he's a better guru. Because he has more followers doesn't mean he's a better guru either. You got maybe millions of followers, but they could be all materialists. So, one follower or no followers could be the greatest devotee. Like Sukadeva didn't have any disciples. Jagannath Das Babaji or Gorkishore Das Babaji, one disciple. So we can't judge the devotee by material types of designations or standards. So these are not how we judge devotees. These are not the things we judge them by. So, also, the devotees may have faults. And of course, they're all going to have faults, even into bhava stage. So if we're looking for faults in devotees, then we're definitely going to find them. Only the Prem Bhakta doesn't have faults, but even then we may find a fault because we're applying our material standards to that Prem Bhakta, and we may find fault there also, even though he is faultless. So in the performance of bhakti, we have devotees at all stages. And here we have the different stages: faith, sadhusanga, bhajana kriya, anartha-nivritti, nishtha, ruchi, asakti, bhava, and prema. So prema is the final goal. But to get there we start with faith. So when we have faith, then we start the process of bhakti. We have a little bit of attraction for the Lord. And we have a lot of anarthas. And maybe we've got aparads also. When we do the bhajana kriya, we increase our devotion to the Lord, and we decrease our anarthas. And when we get to nishtha, then we get more attraction to Krishna and less anarthas, maybe half-half. When we get to ruchi, we get more bhakti. When we get asakti, we get more bhakti and less anarthas. But still there's some anarthas there, and maybe a few aparads. We get to bhava then. generally the anarthas are all gone by then. But there may be the little blue section, aparad may remain. Some little trace of aparad or influence of aparad will remain in bhava stage. In prema, then nothing. No aparad, no anarthas at all. So in all these other stages we have devotees and they will have anartha, therefore we can find fault with them. But we should not be looking for all the faults all the time. Otherwise we'll be making aparad by finding all the faults. So, if one is surrendered to Krishna as a devotee, then he appreciates the devotees, and he'll not criticize the Vaishnavas and look for their faults. He'll look for the amount of devotion rather than the faults, because he realizes everybody's got faults. So that's a sign of a good devotee. He doesn't criticize the other Vaishnavas, the other devotees. Fault finding is a problem, and the counter to that is to respect the devotees. And we often see in the Bhagavatam and other works glorification of the devotees and how we have to respect them. So why? Because the devotees are the cause of faith, and faith is the qualification for bhakti. So a person can't begin bhakti unless he has faith, and he can't get faith unless he gets the mercy of devotees. So therefore the whole process of bhakti depends upon the mercy of devotees. So if we start criticizing devotees and offending devotees, then we're actually destroying the cause of faith itself. We're cutting off the root of bhakti itself. So in Chaitanya Charitamrita it says you should take the food or the maha prasadam and the foot water and the foot dust of a devotee. And this way you can start chanting very nicely. So ultimately the qualification is coming from Krishna. Krishna has bhakti as part of his Sarup Shakti, and then he imbibes that, and he gives that to the jivas in the material world, and they can cultivate that until it becomes very strong. That person can act as a guru and give mercy to others who have maybe a little faith or whatever, and then they can begin to grow also in their bhakti. So in other words, the Shakti of Krishna is transmitted through devotees to other devotees. And of course Krishna can also do it directly, but that's very rare. And usually he goes through the devotees. The devotees act as the medium for Krishna's bhakti Shakti. So if we offend the devotees, then we kind of cut the link. And we no longer get the mercy of Krishna, because we're cutting off that link, like cutting a wire, then there's no more electricity. Yeah. So we can criticize the devotee for his low birth. That is, like in the caste system, we have Sudras or whatever. So if we criticize a devotee because we say we came from a Sudra family or something like that, so that's considered to be aparad, because bhakti is beyond the gunas anyway. So we're thinking of something else, external factors here. And if you criticize a person for sins previous to being a devotee, again, then that's considered to be aparad, because we're looking at his position now as a devotee. And he may have traces of the sinful habits at present, because we know these anarthas are still there. So some of those habits are going to be manifesting sometime or other, and they'll manifest even up into maybe asakti stage. So we shouldn't criticize because of that. Eventually they'll be removed. And he may actually have a accidental sin, and even that should not be criticized. And we'll say, oh, how can we do that? We can't just tolerate everybody being sinful like that. But we see in the Nectar Devotion, or not, in the Bhagavad Gita there, Krishna says, even if a person's committed the most sinful activity, not just durachar, which just means bad conduct, but very bad conduct, Krishna says he's still my devotee. So Krishna accepts that person, even if he's done a very sinful activity. Right? He says, sadhu eva samantavya. He should be considered to be sadhu, as a devotee, in spite of the fact he's done the sin. So here I say accidental sin. So there's another type of sin which is continual. You act like a devotee, but then you do all sinful activities all the time. So that's not what is considered when Krishna says, I accept him as a devotee. He commits a sin, then he corrects himself. And he does his devotional activities as he did before. So that type of person should not be criticized. We should not, anyway, discourage them because of that. So if we commit the aparadhas, as I said, generally, then there's a big obstacle that comes there. And it's very difficult to get mercy once we offend the Vaishnavas. Very difficult. Even if they try to give, there'll be no effect. It won't get there. It's like a big wall blocking. Yeah, so this is the verse from Bhagavad Gita. Even one commits the most abominable action, if he is engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he's properly situated in his determination. So in Vishnu Chakravarti's actually got a very long purport on that, discussing the nature of the devotee. He says, my attachment to my devotee is my very nature. That attachment does not decrease even if the devotee commits wrong, for I make him come to the highest standard. If someone has bad conduct, addicted to violence, thievery, adultery, and worships me, and worships no and accept me, and does not follow any other process like karma or gyan, and has no other desire than my desire, that's what we mean by ananya bhakti, nothing else, no other process, no mixture, etc. He is my devotee, he's sadhu. So what, if he's doing all these bad activities, how he can be considered a devotee? So then he says, he is to be respected as a devotee because of his devotee qualities. We see he's still doing devotional service, it's a command. Not doing so is an offense. My order is authority, so he says, mantavya. He must be respected. So then we can say, well, he should be considered a devotee in some part of him because he's worshiping the Lord, but the other part's not devotional. But then the objection is, he is to be considered a devotee, and only a devotee, eva, only a devotee. He's not partially a devotee, he's a devotee. You should not see his bad qualities at all. He's completely convinced. He makes a splendid resolution, I will go to hell for my sinful actions, which are hard to give up, but I will not give up dedicated worship of Krishna. So Krishna admires the person who, in spite of his faults, he still is very steadfast and determined to worship the Lord. So he says that we have to consider the devotee like that. So to start criticizing unnecessarily, then that is considered to be aparadha. So what is the cause of sadhu ninda? The major cause is asatsanga. As I mentioned yesterday, the asatsanga was the asat person was there, and there's different types of asat people. And then we have the sangha, if it's close association, familiar association, that's more harmful. So if we associate with persons who do not appreciate devotees, who may be impersonalists or whatever, materialists or whatever, and they'll start criticizing devotees, and then we're likely to find faults in devotees and criticize them also. Okay? So we have to avoid that asat sangha. Here, Bhaktivinoda classifies association with women outside of marriage, that's asat sangha, and even within marriage. But if the husband's under the control of the wife, that's asat sangha also. Or we associate with persons who associate with women outside of marriage, and that's asat sangha. We associate with non-devotees like Mayavadis, or pretenders who are like devotees but they're actually not devotees. Atheists, people have no belief in God at all, or person who worship devatas, all these are asat sangha also. So if we closely associate with any of these types of persons, then we can start criticizing the devotees and find faults in them. So I actually explained this verse already. A man will attain the qualities of the person with whom he associates with, just like a crystal takes up the color of the object next to it, like a spatika. Therefore the wise man will take shelter of those who have qualities like his own for the prosperity of his family. So therefore if we want to be good devotees, we have to associate with good devotees. And if we associate with persons who are not good devotees or materialists, then we will become like them. So we have to choose very carefully our association. So if we choose the asat sangha, then we may start committing sadhu ninda. So be careful of that. So we have different types of devotees. The Kanishta, I mentioned, is one who's at the stage of Namabhas. He doesn't have proper knowledge. He worships the deity in the temple. He doesn't serve the Vaishnavas. Associates with non-devotees. So his knowledge is going to be all mixed up. He doesn't have proper sambandha gyan. Huh? There's good qualification. He has a little faith. The Madhyama is on a very healthy stage. So he has sambandha gyan. He serves the superior Vaishnavas. He associates with the equal Vaishnavas. Gives mercy to the Kanishtas. Avoids the Asat people. Chants Sudanam. Avoids Namaparad and Sadhu Ninda. And can distinguish Vaishnava from non-Vaishnava. He avoids the demons. So that's the Madhyama. So this is a very healthy stage to be at. So this is the person who will avoid the Namaparads, and particularly the Vaishnava aparad, because he understands the value of association with devotees. The Kanishta may not do so because he doesn't serve the devotees, so may not understand the value of devotee association, so it's possible he may commit Vaishnava aparad sometime. But the Madhyama, he understands the importance of Vaishnava association, and he deals with the devotees in different ways, and avoids non-devotees. So, very good, healthy stage. Okay. So just to summarize, what is association with devotees? He's friendly with the equal devotees. He does service to the superior devotees. He gives mercy to the Kanishtas, giving them good instructions, and he avoids the non-devotees completely. So this is the key to his advancement for the Madhyamadikari. Yeah. He can advance very nicely by following these types of association. So we see that he appreciates the devotee and doesn't commit offense to them. Okay. So who's the Uttama Adhikari? This is the realized devotee. He sees Krishna in everything. He can realize the Sambandha Gyan, and Krishna is the supreme entity, and he sees his mercy everywhere. He relishes Krishna and the name. Krishna and the name are non-different. There's no possibility of namaparad at all, because he has no fault, no anarthas, no ignorance. But he doesn't distinguish Vaishnava from non-Vaishnava. Now the Madhyamadikari avoided the demons and the non-devotees and associated with the devotees. Uttama doesn't make any distinctions at all. Everybody's the same. He sees the devotee and the demon all as devotees. So he's a little different. So this of course is a stage at which he may not be preaching because he doesn't make any distinctions anymore. Whereas the Madhyama makes distinctions, so he's the one that's preaching to the Kanishtas, associating with the devotees, serving the senior devotees, etc. So he engages in preaching work. Uttama doesn't make any distinctions anymore, so he may give up the preaching. This is 11th canto describes this Uttamadikari. He sees everything in the Lord and with everything within the Lord. So actually it's like the gopis in Vrindavan, they see Krishna everywhere, and they see everyone in ecstasy. The trees are in ecstasy, the deer are in ecstasy, the cows are in ecstasy for Krishna. They see everything in terms of serving Krishna. Okay. So, what is the remedy for sadhu ninda? If we criticize a sadhu, so we have to actually have sincere repentance for criticizing them. And then we have to ask forgiveness from the devotee. If we don't follow this process, then it is very difficult to get rid of this aparad, and consequently our bhakti begins to decrease and decrease and decrease. So, we have to be very careful of this aparad. Okay, any question there?
I have a few questions. Your first slide said that these are not related to devotees. At the same time, if you look at Prabhupada's life, but he had all those. What I'm trying to say is that the devotee can be done right, that he can manifest like the right bhana, because we know that sannyasi is a lot more than anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like a brahmana, of course he's more a brahmana, but he displays the qualities of a brahmana and more. And he displays the right bhana because he's sannyasi. And he displays all these qualities that you mentioned there, that we cannot judge devotee by, but at the same time, they also, the definitions also show that the devotee is also very advanced.
Uh-huh.
Isn't it?
Well, of course, it could also indicate a nice materialist. We could have a wealthy brahmana who has a lot of family members, and then he would follow, and he's old and he's got white hair, and he's got a lot of children, so then he would fall into this category also, wouldn't he? Yeah. So the main thing is we could say the devotion to Krishna, surrender to Krishna. That's the main thing. Other things may or may not be there. But we can't depend mainly on those things to judge simply because he's wealthy, or simply because he's old, or simply because he's a Brahmin, therefore he's a better devotee than a person who's, Kshatriya or a Sudra and is younger and whatever like that. So.
At the same time, Prabhupada had all these things.
Yeah. But we're not worshipping because of that. We're worshipping because it's surrender to the Lord. That's the main thing. And on the other hand, we'll find that Gorky Babaji had the opposite. No followers, no wealth, nothing, So, but he got the highest respect. So.
The other thing is there are, there's quite a few crazy people, and I've noticed sometimes the non-devotees, especially in courts, they say, oh, excuse him because he's crazy, he's done something really nuts, but he qualifies for the night house, so just leave him alone. And sometimes I see people that come and they act quite offensively,
mm-hmm.
and they obviously got some mental issue, because you can tell it's not normal. But they keep on chanting Hare Krishna and they do their thing, whether it's mechanical or not, I don't know. But their attitude towards devotees is quite offensive. But then they keep going, and you can see that person has got some mental issue. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but just by experience with management, you can tell. And then on the other side, you see that there's people who have mental issues, like schizophrenia or bipolar or whatever, but they're real mild, and they know they have those issues, and they take medication, and they try somehow or other to maneuver in the world of devotees. The question is that, do you think that Krishna is like the judge, the court judge, and he'll say, oh, these guys have mental issues, so therefore he can be offensive, it's okay, no problem, because he's not all there. Or do you think that he takes the offense, that's an offense to devotees, whether you're crazy or not? It's going to go anyway.
Yeah. It would probably depend on the offense also. And of course, if they are really crazy, then we can't judge them on that basis. It's like small children may do things and they're not really responsible for their acts in the court. Below a certain age, they're not really responsible, so they don't get punished or whatever like that, like you would for the adults. So like that, we could say for a person actually is insane, then we really can't hold them responsible to the same degree as a normal person. So there may be some effect, but not the same effect.
I just had some kind of understanding about this, and I could be wrong, I'm just presenting to you, if you don't mind, is that I've oftentimes found that people who are really crazy, they become like that because they're really proud, and the pride is in a sense that they estimate their value way up there, when in reality it's not there. And the gap is what you call the craziness. The gap is the inability to fit in society, because I think that I'm up here, whereas in reality I'm down here. But the inability to make it through leads to some kind of insanity. But originally it stems from pride. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, I'm just asking whatever.
To advance the devotional service, if that's the root cause of their craziness, because we have to be humble in the blade of grass. So, if we can't do that, then it's very difficult to advance.
And you think that can all worship deity worship, you said before, it's for Kanishtas.
Well, the Kanishtas do deity worship, but they don't see the devotees. So that doesn't mean that deity worship is only for Kanishtas, but they may do it. In nectar devotion, it's one of the 5 principal angas of bhakti for people practicing pure bhakti. So it's not only for Kanishtas, but Kanishtas do it, but they also have ignorance and they don't associate with devotees. Devotees, they associate with other devotees. That doesn't mean they don't do deity worship. So they do the 5 angas, principally, that is chanting, hearing, association, deity worship, and living in the dham, or living in a temple, or near a temple. So those are 5 principal angas, and the Madhyamadhikaris will do those, so they don't reject deity worship at that stage.
Because I heard one interesting lecture of Prabhupada getting power.
Mm-hmm.
So he said deity worship is for neophytes, but he said it's for neophytes because, interestingly, he said because the neophyte will come to the temple, and he doesn't know anything, but because he bows down before the deity, then he makes a blessing. And therefore it's for them. He takes that. Take that it's not necessarily for he who worships the deity, but it's an opportunity for the neophyte, one that doesn't know anything, to come in and bow down in front of the deity. So in this way, Prabhupada says he makes the blessing.
In Bhakti Sandarbha Jiva Goswami says that deity worship is for the rich grihastas, so they can spend their money. Gives an opportunity to spend their wealth on something related to Krishna.
I have 2 questions. You were quoting from Vishnu Chakravarti in relation to Apachitra Sudraja. And it seemed there, like what Vishnu Chakravarti was saying, is that Krishna is quite tolerant of the devotee's shortcomings.
Yeah.
As long as they have this impetus to want to serve Krishna.
He's not so tolerant of aparads.
How tolerant is he?
He's not so tolerant of aparads.
No, I'm talking about
sinful activity, if it's accidental.
Yeah, I'm talking more about like if a person just due to past conditioning or just due to physical incapacity is not able to properly surrender. We've all got so many conditions, so many narcos and stuff like that. How tolerant?
Yeah. So if it becomes continual, then this is accidental, so it doesn't mean all the time. So it starts happening all the time, then that's not the same position for Krishna, so he's not going to tolerate so much. And at a certain point, it may also turn into aparad, because we have the 7th aparad, committing sinful activity in the strength of the holy name. So it becomes aparad and works the opposite direction. His bhakti gets destroyed then, in that case. So then Krishna's not tolerating then. So therefore, if he limits his sinful activity, fine. If it's not limited and he keeps doing it, then it's questionable how much Krishna's going to tolerate.
But then what about in the circumstance where and you see this often, where devotees are trying their best in devotional service, they know they're performing a sinful activity, they don't want to perform a sinful activity, but due to their past conditioning, it keeps coming up.
Yeah.
But they're sincerely trying to...
So if they keep trying, then of course that's to their credit, and Krishna gives them some mercy, but like I say, there's going to be a slow advancement in that case. Yeah.
Okay, and the second question, Asatsanga. You gave, it was 5 different definitions of Asatsanga. And one of those was associating with those who worship Devas. What about Devas who worship in ISKCON?
Well, it depends on the concept. So you can worship a Devata in a Vaishnava way by offering everything to Krishna first, and then giving them the prasadam, or doing the arti to Krishna, and then doing the arti to them with the same articles. So that is bona fide. You can do that. You can get away with that. So when the Devata worship, where you only worship the Devatas, offering directly to them as if they were supreme, and they can give something that Krishna cannot give, that's the Devata worship, which is we don't like at all.
But then what we see happens in the temples where there are Devatas is you get people who come to the temple, they have no interest in Krishna at all, they just want to come to the Devata and ask them for some material benediction. So is that the satsanga? Because that's their intention, they've got no interest in Krishna.
Oh yes, so if we associate with those people closely, then then we will be committing asatsanga.
So therefore, introducing Devata worship in this kind is risky business.
Unless we teach them that it's they're only devotees of Krishna. But
criticize devotees regardless of the faults, and even if they commit some abominable activity, and we do accept that we shouldn't criticize. At the same time, if some fault is there and if it's severe, it has to be addressed.
Yeah, so that's a different case. Yeah. So in other words, the criticism means maliciously criticizing with no good intentions. That's what we're talking about. Certainly if people have faults, it's better we try to correct them if we're capable, or we inform somebody so that it can be corrected. So there's nothing wrong with that. But when we publicly criticize, or we criticize with a malicious intent, then that's where the problem comes. Or if there's unfounded criticism, we're just criticizing and finding fault where no fault exists just to put the person down. So that's unjustified criticism. So if it's unjustified or it has an ill intention behind it, this is where we get bad effects from it. If it's otherwise, no. But still, we always have to be careful with how we handle devotees.
Hare Krishna. I was wondering if you could explain, sometimes there's some devotees that will take offense at even the slightest thing, even if it wasn't intentional. Anything you do seems offensive to them, and they're angry at you. And you have to, every time you have to bow down and beg for forgiveness, but pretty much you're doing that all day. It's like, so my question is like, how should we as devotees, like, if someone is offensive to us, or if we have, how should we react to an offense to us?
Oh, yeah, well the devotees are always humbler than a blade of grass, so they don't really mind to say, we don't expect respect, and we give respect to all others. So that's the general conduct. If people do offend or whatever, we don't really take it too seriously, whatever like that. Of course, it may be harmful for them also, because if they're unreasonably disrespecting or criticizing for some reason, then definitely they get some bad results for that. And if it's malicious, then they get very bad results for it. If it's accidental, of course, that's tolerable or whatever. So that's their problem. That becomes their problem rather than your problem if they're making those criticisms or whatever. That we can tolerate. Of course, we can consider it our bad karma or something due to our past sinful activities, and we tolerate that situation. By tolerating, Krishna is very merciful to you. Okay. Hare Krishna.